Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video, this time around for Star Fox Zero for the Nintendo Wii U, which is the latest entry in the Star Fox series. A well-beloved action shooting series that has been hanging around since the Super Nintendo days, and I've been a pretty big fan of the series ever since its conception in the Super Nintendo era. Have a lot of fond memories playing the original game, and of course Star Fox 64, which is another among one of my favorite games of all time, to be honest. So I was honestly excited for Star Fox Zero, but at the same time a little bit with some doubts based solely on the fact that when Nintendo first unveiled these during one of the, I think E3 maybe 2 years ago, Miyamoto did like a really quick demo presentation where he was holding the gamepad and using the gyroscope, and right then I was like, oh man, I really hope Nintendo doesn't screw up the control scheme. I really hope it doesn't become one of the it doesn't become a motion controlled only type of game. And truth to be told, it somewhat is that. All the missions have the optional gyroscope motion sensor use. But at the same time, there are a lot of elements that are borrowed from early Star Fox entries, which is the normal gameplay, the normal action on rails, controlling your R-Wing and just shooting at enemies. So it's a little bit of a blend between old school Star Fox gameplay mechanics and some new modern Wii/Wii U concepts, gyroscope use and motion sensor and all that. So overall, I really enjoyed this game. There are ups and downs, or pros and cons, I guess, in terms of the gameplay specifically, which I will delve into a little bit more in a second. But as far as there was a little bit of a confusion, I think, because a lot of the impressions and previews that I was watching here on YouTube were calling this a Star Fox 64 remake, which is not true. I don't know if people are confused. There are like a couple levels that pay homage to the Star Fox 64 game, but overall this game is the levels for the most part are completely new, and the gameplay offers enough variety that it feels a lot like Star Fox 64, but this is far from a remake. So I don't know if people either have not played the original Star Fox 64, or they just play the first two levels and they automatically assume that the rest of the game is a remake of Star Fox 64. But fear not, if you guys have played Star Fox 64 and you're afraid that you already played that game, been there, done that, don't be afraid of picking this up if you want to experience new levels and stuff like that, because this is it pays homage to the Star Fox 64 game, which is good because it's my favorite in the series. But some levels have similarities, but for the most part this is an entire brand new game, although the storyline is very similar to Star Fox 64, to the point where in the intro, where the first level is Corneria, the line dialogues, the voice dialogue for Fox when he says prepare, open your wings and check your G diffuser system, all the voice dialogues are straight up the same lines from the Star Fox 64 game, which again is a little bit of a homage. But as far as the gameplay, it's similar but not exactly the same. And as far as the levels, there are a couple levels that are very similar to the 64 version, but for the most part this is an entire new game. Now with that, it comes positive and bad things. The positive obviously is that more variety, the graphics obviously, which are vastly improved over the Nintendo 64, which is another thing. A lot of people were complaining about the graphics. I think it's a fair, I guess, complaint, but at the same time, I don't know. I thought the graphics were okay. They're not obviously a technical. A technical huge thing for the Wii U. Even we have games like Xenoblade Chronicles X, which look fantastic, and even Mario Kart 8, Mario 3D World, they look fantastic. But Star Fox 64 definitely doesn't shine because of its graphics. But some people were saying that it looks really bad. It looks just as bad as a Nintendo 64 game, and I don't think that's true. I think the game maintains that aesthetic that truly gives a a charm and souls to the Star Fox series. So in my opinion, the graphics were appropriate. Yes, they could have been a little bit, I guess, more polished, or maybe add more effects, lighting effects, explosion effects, or whatever. But for the most part, the graphics are pretty colorful, and the frame rate, which is king here, the game runs at a pretty smooth frame rate, which is, performance is fantastic, which is great in this type of shooting / arcadey type of games. So the graphics for me were okay. And I don't really have complaints. Sure, they could have been better, but I was happy enough with the graphics as it was. The soundtrack, fantastic. The game does borrow, both from the voice acting, which is very similar to the Star Fox 64 games, to the songs themselves, which again, the orchestrated pieces are fantastic and very well suited for this type of game, and a lot of memories. If you guys are a fan of the original Star Fox and Star Fox 64, you'll hear a lot of familiar tunes that are going to pull a string in your heart, I'm sure. And I was having a blast with this game, especially in the early stages, early levels. I just had a huge smile on my face. But I do want to warn people, even though as much as I like this game, again, I'm a huge fan of the original, of all the Star Fox games, to be honest. I think they're all good in their own way, but again, the original Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64 versions are my personal favorites. So I always enjoy the characters. I always enjoy the silliness of the characters. They're all animals that can talk to each other, and things like that. And just the overall Star Fox universe, I always thought it was silly but enjoyable, pretty funny, and which is why I enjoy the series overall. So I had a huge smile on my face as I was playing the earlier levels, and but I'm not really sure a lot of people can relate to that. If you guys are new to the Star Fox series, you may find yourself on a game that it's fun but nothing exceptional. And it's funny because I was reading a review, I think it was by Giant Bomb or something like that. It was on a NeoGAF topic, and they said they gave this game a low score, saying that this game would have been appropriate if it was released back in 2002. And they said that with a negative connotation, but it's funny because a lot of the people on NeoGAF that read that, they were actually, no, that's actually a good thing, because it takes us back to the good old days where games were simpler, they were more about the gameplay. And I think the people that reviewed that particular website that reviewed that gave that review, they were expecting maybe a higher budget game with better graphics, a AAA Hollywood-esque type of storyline, and Star Fox goes against all of those principles. Star Fox is all about the gameplay, the simplicity, and just overall fun. And with that comes a lot of the things that are frowned upon nowadays, which is such as the length of the game. You can beat this game in as fast as 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. You can be done with the you can see the ending of the game within 3 to 4 hours. I think it took me like 4 hours to see the ending. But there's a ton of replay value. Being an arcadey type of game, you can go back and try to get all the gold medals in each level. And of course, there are branching paths, just like Star Fox 64, where depending on how well you perform on a certain mission, or if you meet certain requirements, you can branch off and unlock new levels, which is something that I want to do now, because I beat the game and I'm not really sure if my path was like the easiest one or the normal one. I can think of really quick of one part of the game where there's a branching section. You have to save Peppy. In one occasion, Peppy has a lot of enemies attacking him, and if you're not able to save him in time, he falls in this like planet, and that's what happened to me. I was a little bit rusty with the controls, so I was not able to save him. So the branching path goes into this one world or level where you have to go and rescue him. So I'm sure if you're able to save him, you will go on a different branching path and explore new levels, which is kind of like the charm of the Star Fox series, finding out how can you unlock new levels, what requirements you have to do. And of course, nowadays it's really easy. You just hop online and you read the requirements. But back in the day, it was a lot of gossiping in school, in middle school. I found this new level and this is what you have to do. So, the game is old school. The gameplay is old school, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, it's frowned upon nowadays to have a short game, especially if it releases for $59.99, which is the retail price of Star Fox Zero here. But the cool thing is that it comes in this bigger than normal box, and as you can see, that's a cardboard. It's thicker. Reason being, it comes with a second game, which is Star Fox Guard, which I have not played yet. It's supposed to be some similar of like a tower defense type of game, and I'm excited to play it, but I haven't played it yet, and I'm gonna do an impressions video once I'm through that game. But that was actually the trigger point for me. At first, I was a little bit hesitant whether I was gonna pick this up on day one. I was gonna hope for a price drop, which is kind of a risky thing to do with Nintendo games. They hardly ever drop down in price, so I figured, well, I think I'm gonna wait. I don't really feel like paying $60, even though I really love the Star Fox franchise. But when they announced that Star Fox Guard, which is a separate game, was coming bundled in the first print run of the game, I was like, yeah, I'm down. I'll buy it. You know, it's 2 games for $60. But the meat and potatoes obviously lies within this game, which is, you know, Star Fox Zero. And the cool thing, some of the new features in the game, let's talk about that. There are new vehicles that you can use, such as the walker, which is like this chicken-like shape that your R-Wing assumes, and you can walk and you can be on land while using the walker, which is a concept that was retrieved from Star Fox 2, which is a game that was never released for the Super Nintendo. It's one of those legendary games that for some reason it was almost done. I think the game was done actually, and Nintendo for some reason they never released that game. But Star Fox 2, yeah, that was a thing, and the walker was one of the concepts that was borrowed from that game and implemented into Star Fox Zero. And I do have to admit, I'm not a big fan of the walker. The controls, I found them a little bit confusing using the twin sticks, one to go back and forth and the other one basically to strafe. But at the same time, the one that you use for strafe, you have to double tap to roll out of the way of the bullets. And it becomes a little bit confusing with the motion control. To aim, you use the gyroscope. I was not a very big fan of the walker sections in the game, which unfortunately there are quite a bit of sections where you have to transform into the walker. There are some boss fights where you have to attack the boss as an R-Wing type of method, and then you have to transform to the walker and then back to the R-Wing, and that's easily done with the A button. I think you push the A button and your R-Wing ship transforms into a walker. The Landmaster is back, which is, you know, it made its debut in Star Fox 64, which is a tank that goes on land. There are a couple of new additions to the Landmaster, which now there's a special device that you can use to make it hover for a very long period of time, and there's a very epic boss battle later in the game in this snow theme level where you have to fight this spider, huge spider boss, and it was just an epic battle, and you have to be switching between the Landmaster and this hovering device in order to kill the boss. So that was a very, very fun boss fight. And then there was another one, I think it's called the Gyromaster, which is a ship that can deploy like a small robot, and then you can control the robot by control remote using your gamepad screen. It felt very gimmicky in my opinion, and it slowed down the pace of the game way too much. For me, Star Fox, to me the true essence, the true core essence of Star Fox relies on Star Fox 64. You have the R-Wing, the Landmaster, and then the submarine, I forgot the name. But everything is moving at all times. Everything is fast-paced, except the submarine missions and the Landmaster missions. But you're always moving forward. You're always attacking. Whereas Star Fox Zero introduces, you know, the walker and the other, you know, the Gyromaster ship. With they slow things down quite a bit, which in my view, it's a little bit of a negative. It puts a pause in the otherwise dynamic gameplay of the Star Fox games, but nevertheless, it adds variety. I think if all the missions were R-Wing based, it would be a little bit boring in my opinion. So it is what it is. I did have fun, and of course the other big addition is the controls, which it was a little bit of a controversy. It's a hit or miss, and with most people, a lot of people hate it. A lot of people actually like it. I'm torn in between the middle. I think when you play in the all range mode with the R-Wing, it's very fun hitting that minus button on your gamepad to switch to the first person view in the cockpit, and it feels like it's more immersive. You're in this first person view, you have a better view of your surroundings, and you can move the gyroscope to aim, and then at the same time you can move your sticks to take a look around your environments. And it's very easy that way when you're fighting against, for example, Star Wolf, which is, you know, the bad guys basically. It's very convenient to switch to that first person view and just to keep track of where your enemy is. And in a way, it's very immersive. It's a very good idea, but there are levels, like I mentioned, you know, the walker levels, where no matter if you're playing on third person view or first person view, it's just annoying and sometimes very, very confusing and rage inducing at the same time. Some of the boss fights that you have to do using the walker are just rage inducing. So again, the gyroscope controls, the first person view controls, hit or miss. In a way, I'm glad they added them, and in some ways, you know, I was about to break my gamepad in half. So it is what it is. It's based on a personal basis or level. So again, I enjoy those controls using the all range mode in the R-Wing, but other than that, they were very frustrating. But it is what it is. Lastly but not least, the game also features amiibo implementation, which it's good because, you know, I have a pretty big collection of amiibos here, as you can see. So I'm always looking for excuses to use them. I have them as a display piece here, but I'm always looking forward to using them. And the addition of the amiibo is always, you know, trivial at best. If you use the Falco amiibo, you get to unlock the Black R-Wing, which is, I think it's faster and more maneuverable, but at the same time is weaker. Like you can get shot down quicker, but it's a pretty cool looking R-Wing, the Black R-Wing. And if you use the Fox amiibo, which I have not used it yet, I used Falco but not Fox. But supposedly if you use Fox, you get to use the original R-Wing model from the Super Nintendo, which is pretty cool. And I'm gonna try it now. In fact, after I'm recording this video, I'm gonna do a second run of Star Fox Zero, try to unlock new levels, and use the Fox McCloud amiibo to see what the original R-Wing looks like on the Wii U screen in HD. So another one thing before I close down the video, another cool thing is that the somersault and the U-turn thing that was previously mapped to in the Nintendo 64 version, you have to push like down and one of the C buttons in order to do those maneuvers, you know, the somersault. Now they're mapped to a button, so all you have to do is press one button and your R-Wing will do a somersault or the U-turn thing, which is I thought it was pretty convenient and pretty cool. But now that we're talking about controls, another thing that I did not like at all was how the rolling, you know, the do-a-barrel roll, the famous line, it's mapped to the right control stick, and the right control stick also allows you to move the camera and to move your strafe around, and it's also used to accelerate when you're in the R-Wing, to boost and to brake. So sometimes I was caught in the middle. I wanted to do a barrel roll, and I found myself, for example, pushing up a little bit, so my R-Wing was accelerating. So it's not very good. I think the Nintendo 64 version gave you more control, because in order to roll, I think you had to use either the Z button or one of the triggers, and that gave you more control because it was assigned to the specific function of doing the barrel roll. Whereas, and then the boost and the brake had their own buttons layouts. So the Nintendo 64 version gives you way more control at the end of the day, which in my opinion is very valuable. And Star Fox Zero, again, it has a very gimmicky approach, which sometimes it works, sometimes it's very immersive, but it can get on your nerves pretty easily, you know, through the examples that I just gave. But overall, Star Fox Zero, I don't think this game is for everybody. If you enjoyed previous Star Fox entries, especially Star Fox 64, this is definitely a game to try. Then you have the issue of the, you know, money value. Is it worth it? If you're gonna play 4 hours, $60. Again, there's a lot of replay value in the game, but there are people out there that once they beat a game, they never go back to them. So it's a pros and cons that you have to weigh in before you make a purchase. So if you're a fan of Star Fox series like myself, I'd say definitely pull the trigger, because it's a very enjoyable game with the typical Star Fox things added to it. And I think it was a very enjoyable game for me, at least, despite some of the annoyances with the controls and everything like that. So yeah, that's it for now, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.